I want to mention the first book I read. Sorry for being selfish, because this is really the first thing I read is the book on Drive. Can you say something
That
about that?
that's one of the things. I mean, we have to, again, that's a book that looks at the science of motivation. And I know that you have a biology background, so you know about motivation at the biological level. And human beings are have a mix of drives. We have different kinds of motivations, different kinds of drives. We have a biological drive. There's a reason that I ate right before this session because I was hungry. All right. It's late at night in the United States. I hadn't had dinner yet, so I ate because I was hungry. That's a motivation, right? That's part of we have biological drives. Human beings also respond to rewards and punishments in our environment. In many cases, if you reward behavior, you'll get more of it. If you punish behavior, you'll get less of it. And that's part of what it is to be human. But that's not all it is to be human. And the argument in this book is that human beings around the world, not just in the States, not just in China, but everywhere, and you see it really profoundly with kids, have other kinds of drives. We want to be self-directed. We want to have some control over what we do, how we do it, when we do it, where we do it. We want to learn and grow and get better at things that matter, mastery. And we want to have some purpose behind what we're doing. We want to have make some kind of contribution, make some kind of difference. And so human motivation is multifaceted, but I think in organizations, too often we stop at that second drive. We stop at that reward and punishment drive and don't account for the full dimensions of what it is to be human. And once we do that, people can work smarter, they can get more done, they can get better work done, and they can be happier.
Yeah. And then that was really contradictory. I mean, I remember in your book, you talk about this example where you give people more rewards to see if they get better results. And you would think that yes, right? But
Yeah,
actually, I think the outcome is that it's only yes for certain type of
exactly.
tasks.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. It's exactly right. So it's nuanced. So there's certain kinds of things where if you have very simple tasks, if you offer somebody a contingent reward, that is, if you do this, then you get that. For simple tasks, that works very well. Human beings love rewards. It gets our attention, but it gets our attention in this very focused, narrow way. That's a very good frame of mind if you know exactly what you need to do. If you're following a recipe, you're following a set of rules, you're following an algorithm. It's very effective for simple tasks with short time horizons. But we have now 60 years of evidence in social psychology, in some in cognitive psychology, even some in economics, showing that for complex tasks with longer time horizons, those kinds of contingent rewards, if you do this, then you get that, don't work very well. They often have no effect. And the reason is that if you're going to do something creative, if you're going to do something that's a little where you're not even sure what problem you're solving, you don't want to focus on the problem like this. You want to focus on the problem much more expansively. And so one of the things that science tells us is that we have to have the science tells us that human beings are complicated and that certain kinds of motivators work better for certain kinds of tasks.
Because you did say the carrot and stick, which was sort of people thought that was the way to motivate people, but that wasn't. So in your drive, you mentioned the outcome. I'll give it sort of a giveaway, the three real things that motivate people or drive people. And we talked about number one just now in terms of being autonomous, so being
Yes.
able to make your own decision. There are two more, right?
Yes, I mean, I mentioned them briefly. One is mastery, which is our desire to get better at something that matters, to make progress in meaningful work. Mastery is why people on the weekends play musical instruments, they play sports, they just want to get better. There's something exhilarating about getting better. And that's a really fundamental human motivation, and it's one that's often overlooked. But when you put people in jobs where they can get better at something that matters, they really, really flourish. When they can make progress every day, people end up doing great work. So that's one. So mastery is one. And then the other one is purpose, which is, knowing how to do something is important, but knowing why you're doing it is a performance enhancer. There's a ton of evidence that when people know why they're doing something, they do it better. When they know that why they're doing something makes a difference in the world or makes a contribution to somebody else, their performance goes up. And we have lots and lots of evidence of that. And so what I'm trying to do is give especially managers a three-dimensional view of the human condition, a three-dimensional view of what really motivates people. We're not simply biological drives. We're not simply carrot and stick drives. We also have this other drive, which is our desire to control our own lives, make progress in meaningful work, and to make a difference in the world. And when we put those conditions in place, particularly in organizations, people do more work, they do better work, and they're happier.
Yeah. And I wonder why, do you think those are, once people read your book, they will say, wow, this is so, it really, aligns with our intuition. That seems right? That's
Interesting,
kind of
yeah.
how people feel. And but then why the sort of the mass majority of practices are not so, are more still. I think even today we see a lot of carrot and
Sure.
sticks. Why was that?
I think for a few reasons. Number one is that they are effective for certain things.
Mm,
So let's say that you wanted people to stuff envelopes.
mhm.
You're much better off paying them for every envelope they stuff and giving them a bonus for every 200 envelopes they stuff. You will get more envelopes stuffed that way, period. There's no question about that. So it works for certain kinds of things. What's happening now around the world, in the United States and in China as well, is that less and less work is this routine, mechanical kind of work, and more of it calls on judgment, creativity, and conceptual thinking. So, but for certain, but those carrot and stick rewards do work for certain kinds of tasks. They just don't work for every task. The second thing is that what's important to understand here is that as much as intrinsic motivation is an engine that drives people toward higher performance, human beings love rewards. They get
Mm,
our attention. And so if you dangle money in front of somebody or any kind of prize in front of somebody, they will act. They will move, they won't necessarily do the right thing. They won't necessarily do good work, but there will be activity. And so that sometimes misleads people. And then I think the other thing, which is actually harder to scrub away, is that these carrot and stick motivators are really easy for managers.
true.
Rewards and punishments are really easy. If I say, if you were my employee, or more likely, if I were your employee, for you to say, well, what do we do for, how do I create a condition where Daniel is autonomous? How do I create a condition where Daniel is seeing his progress and getting feedback and making, and learning how to do something better and learning and growing and developing? How do I make sure that Daniel sees that his individual contribution is toward a larger purpose? That's really hard. It's much easier for you to just wave some money in front of me and then I go scurrying off. So this is the habits are very hard to extinguish.
Yeah. And I think you wrote something, I think, very succinct in your book, and talking about the reason carrot stick approach prevails is because this is our current society or machinery is one that seeks efficiency. So when
That's
you
part of it. That's part of it. And there are things that and efficiency is important. There are things that are efficient. But my view is that a lot of the efficiencies inside, especially inside of firms, ultimately are going to be automated. That human beings aren't going to be doing the things that are all about efficiency. That those kinds of things are going to be routinized into software or AI or something like that. And what you need from human beings is judgment, discernment, creativity, and those kinds of things do not respond well to those contingent rewards.
right, indeed. And then this is a time of change. And the efficiency is part of it, as you said, but
Sure.
efficiency is also much better done by machines.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because
The
you know what?
machine,
Machines, here's the thing, machines and software, they don't complain about being tired. They don't complain about missing their kids. They don't complain that they're not learning. They just do what they do over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that's a good thing. In some ways, that's how societies make progress. I mean,
yeah,
even if you look at, not all manufacturing, but a lot of manufacturing now is routinized. It's done by robots. It's not human beings turning the same screw the same way over and over on an assembly line.
right.
The human beings who are working in manufacturing are doing higher level work, and that's going to continue and continue and continue. And as human beings do higher level work, the kinds of motivators that we used in the 20th century and in the 19th century are becoming outdated.
Yeah, indeed. And I think this one from here, I want to kind of lead us to a conversation about your earlier book, the one about called A Whole New Mind. 中文叫做全新思维. It's also translated to Chinese. When I was reading that book, and also actually I saw they also have like a quasi TED speech around that time in 2006 when you're promoting that book. I had two feelings. One is that, wow, this is 2006. It's like 20 years ago. Then, like those are things that seems to be, wow, it's so long ago. But the second thing I was feeling at the same time is that all what Daniel was saying back then still holds even today. And if anything, this is a bigger problem because back then that wasn't anything like AI. Like automation is a thing, but not such a big thing. And now like this is much bigger deal.